Meet the new boss, very different than the old boss. The current Pentagon chief, Lloyd Austin, is a retired Army four-star general who led U.S. forces in Iraq. The potential next Pentagon chief, Pete Hegseth, doesn't share quite the same bio or the same confidence in what he'll do. The reception inside of the Defense Department is, at best, skeptical, at worst, pretty apoplectic. Senior commanders are describing Hegseth's elevation as, quote, ridiculous, quote, an effing nightmare. And they're worrying about Hegseth's slavish fealty to Donald Trump. Joining us at the table is Paul Rieckhoff. He is an Iraq war veteran and the founder and CEO of Independent Veterans of America. Paul, you know Pete Hegseth, or you've met him before. You had a pretty strong reaction, and you've been receiving a lot of strong reactions from people that you know who are in service, perhaps in the Pentagon as well.
Yeah, I've known Pete Hegseth a long time. I think everybody in the military and veterans community knows, or anybody who watches Fox News. We actually co-authored an op-ed together at the Wall Street Journal years ago when we were trying to reform the VA. Everybody was trying to reform the VA. Pete is a well-known character in the community, and he is absolutely and totally unqualified for this job. Maybe the most unqualified nominee in the history of the job, back to when it was the Secretary of War. And the reaction from the Pentagon has been overwhelmingly shocked, flabbergasted, outraged. This is maybe the most important job in the cabinet. This is the person who oversees the most diverse, the strongest military force on the planet, almost 3 million people. And this is maybe the most overtly political pick that Trump has made. This is like nominating, Dan Bongino or Rush Limbaugh to run the Pentagon, to run our military. And that's maybe what's most outrageous. You can pick someone who's a congressman or a member of the Senate, but to pick someone who's so overtly political in a job that's supposed to be beyond politics, that's the big problem here. And I think that's why you're going to see pushback from both sides. We need someone who can put party first. This was a chance for Trump to go moderate, to try to appeal to the rest of the country and the people who didn't vote for him. And he really drove a wedge and doubled down on really a culture warrior. He's a veteran, but there are 16 million veterans in America. He's more of a culture warrior than he is an administrator and someone who can effectively lead the Pentagon.
Yeah, just to that point, I'm going to play a little bit of just the culture warrior of it all seems to be really at the heart of what Pete Hegseth has actually been kind of positioning himself as. Take a listen to this.
The dumbest phrase on planet Earth in the military is our diversity is our strength. It's one thing to have DEI inside your corporation or inside your university. It's a whole other thing to have it inside the 101st Airborne. We only have one military, and if the military goes woke, then it is less equipped to fight the wars it needs to fight. I'm straight up just saying we should not have women in combat roles. It hasn't made us more effective, hasn't made us more lethal, has made fighting more complicated.
Paul?
Well, he's got to lead over 200,000 women who are in combat roles and combat adjacent roles, people who've been wounded in combat, and 20 years of people who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan. So how are you going to effectively lead the entire military when you come out of the gate with a view like that? How is that going to impact recruiting, retention, senior leadership? You have to be a uniter, especially in a political environment like this. You have to be someone who transcends politics, not doubles down on the most radical kinds of politics.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of quote a little bit from Nicole Hannah-Jones, who was sitting right where you are sitting tonight, Ashley, yesterday said and pointed out correctly that the military, if you're talking about DEI, was the first institution to really insist on integration, to insist that Black service members get the same benefits as other white service members in this country. The reason people say diversity is our strength is because the military had to do it.
Yes. And
they
I
had
think,
to do it.
Yes, that's why I think teaching a comprehensive history is so important. So many Black servicemen went and fought for their country, and when they returned back home, were mistreated, were denied benefits. They fought just as hard as their white counterparts. They fought because they loved the democracy, even though they were not always represented fully in the franchise of what the democracy represents. And so to say, it's not about having DEI, it's about having our armed forces represent who they are actually protecting and serving. I thank you for your service. I thank Tulsi and this new nominee for his service. It doesn't mean that they need to be over our military. It also makes me really nervous. I am a generation of 9/11. I had friends to go to war after 9/11 happened. I had a friend who died after going to war after 9/11. And I don't know if the country is really aware. It's not just people's lives, but people may have to go to war because of the decisions that some of these people do. And Republican or Democrat, people die on the battlefield, and that bullet doesn't have a political party's name on it. This is why these positions are so important. And I really just want to say I respect you, because we've sat at this table and not always agreed on certain things. I think you call balls and strikes, and that's what we need to be doing when we're talking about our national security.
And that's what you need the Pentagon, right? Yeah. Especially in an environment like this, the Pentagon has to be immune from politics. We've got troops in combat right now. The troops were hit with rocket attacks in Syria just a couple days ago. We are actively engaged around the world. So if you want to start pulling things back, like pulling women out of combat roles, if you want to start doing things like imposing a trans ban or removing the senior leadership, you are going to disrupt the military while it's actively engaged, and that's the kind of decision that our enemies will be celebrating.
But one of the things you mentioned earlier was about recruitment and retention within the military, which is obviously a big concern, and some of the more traditional picks haven't necessarily experienced improvement in those areas. I think I also know Pete for some years now, and I think he's a great guy. I don't think people are really giving him a fair chance at this. I think he'll do a very good job. One of the critiques I think that many are saying is, oh, well, he's never presided over 2 million employees before. Well, nobody has, unless you're the Walton family. So I don't think that's a fair critique about the managerial aspect of the job. So and I think he'll do a very good job. And I have very much hope in that pick.
If you're about to manage 2 million people, you might want to pick someone that's managed 2,000 or something like that, right? So
you've often got undersecretaries. You got someone like C.Q. Brown, who is eminently qualified, 40 years in service, and is commanded at multiple levels, and I think that's important as well.
This is an important part. I mean, you mentioned this. I mean, the qualifications, but I cannot put that to the side, because the DOD and the Department of Defense Secretary has become a much more complex job over the years. That's one of the reasons why multiple presidents have had to dip back into the high ranks of the military, getting waivers from Congress in order to do it, in order to find defense secretaries who even understand the complexity of this agency. It's a hard, complicated job.
Sure it is, but at the same time, during that same period, you've seen people in place that have this corporate Department of Defense relationship with the big government contractors. And there's no question that folks are railing about the NDAA being rubber stamped, increases, taxpayer dollars going out the window. I don't know, Pete. I went to Marine Corps Officer Candidate School in Quantico, Virginia. I have ultimate respect for service members. Apparently he did 20 years. He's got 2 Bronze Stars. Is he qualified to oversee 3 million people? I have no idea. But if he's putting service members first and actually putting DOD contractors last, then I think that's something that the American people...
Is he qualified? The question should be, is he disqualified? Yeah. And I think if you take someone who is a partisan bomb thrower from Fox and transition him over to the Pentagon, same thing if he worked at MSNBC or somewhere else, that should be disqualifying in this kind of a political environment.
I mean, I think that it would be interesting if that were actually Pete Hegseth's position on contractors. I actually don't really know. Exactly. Because most of what he talks about is how woke the Pentagon is, which seems to be, frankly, the least of this country's worries at this point.
But I think Pete has in the past, Abby, talked about wanting to make sure that our safety is first and foremost, and that we put our service members and veterans first always.
That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody wants. Who doesn't want that?
Paul Rieckhoff, thank you very much for joining us, as always. Everyone.